Hey everybody, Adam Rake here. You are listening to the NFL UKEndZone show with two of the greatest hosts, I say, in broadcast history, Tom and Ollie. And I'll tell you what, they're two personal friends of mine. And if you do not like this show, well then guess what? You're dead to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 41 of the UKEndZone football programme. My name is Tom Moore, your humble host, and with me, as always, I'll get straight into the introduction for this man, because I tell you what, he's in pain right now. He's suffering, he is suffering, because he follows those Patriots. He walks behind Tom Brady's shadow and his footsteps, and he loves him like a brother, and now he's no longer in the game anymore. Join the rest of us, Ollie Connolly.
Hey Tom, what's going on?
Remarkably chipper, considering the circumstances.
Hey look, we'll break it down later on, but seriously, this team, I mean, to even get to where they were was ludicrous. I banged on about it all year. 10 of their 13 best players have disappeared. They're either in jail or on an injury table somewhere. It's ridiculous. So don't say here we go. Come on now. We all know it's true. 12-4 season, make a championship game with that roster is pretty impressive. They didn't play well, don't get me wrong, they didn't play well at all, but I'm fine with it. I'm cool. I'm more of an analyst now, so I'm trying to remove this Patriots cap as much as possible when we, shepherd in the Ryan Mallett era.
That's true. My Packers cap is firmly welded to my head. And I can't separate myself from it. I'm sorry, I can't. Anyway, welcome to the show. We're brought to you, of course, by www.UKEndZone.com. Make sure you check it out. Great UK-based NFL website. We've got articles on there about fantasy football. We've got articles on there about stats. We've got opinion pieces. We've even got stupid comedy stuff that I write and put up there. And of course, Ollie's got his scouting stuff and stuff going on before the draft. Make sure you check out the website. If you want to follow us on Twitter, please do, because we like to follow you back, or at least I do. But also, what we like to do is we like to hear your thoughts, read them out on the show, questions, etc. So please get in touch with us. You can follow me at Thomas Moore, that's MOORE 27. You can follow Ollie at Ollie, that's with an IE, UKEZ. And of course, follow the UKEndZone website, Twitter handle as well, which is obviously at UKEndZone. Now, what we like to do on the show, if you're an old listener, you know this. If you're a new listener, then we'll just introduce this to you. We like to go through some general news first, news of the world. Not just the football world, news of the whole world. We'll tackle that first. Then we'll get into some football chat and some questions, including Robbo in the field, our roving reporter. He comes on, starts some debates each week, and then we'll break down what happened in the conference championship games with our fantasy writer from UKEndZone.com, Neil Dutton. And we'll do that later. And that will finish the show. But before we do, Ollie, we've got some interesting numbers, do we not?
We have some interesting numbers we once a month get from Liberated Syndication, the site who was, nice enough to hold and stream our podcast. They'll give us a breakdown of the countries once a month that have downloaded the podcast. Breakdowns of how they've done it, not in an interfering, NSA way, Tom. Just let us know what countries have done it. And my mind is always blown by some of the nations. Now, again, I can't figure out if these are people flying internationally from the UK or the US, or whether there are people in countries such as Ethiopia who are big on the NFL and like listening to me and you.
Yes, and here we go. So, listeners, we are a truly international podcast. Of course, we get big numbers of downloads from the UK, the USA, Ireland, then if we keep going, New Zealand, Canada, France, Singapore, Spain. Right. Here are the big interesting ones, just before we get into the news and then obviously NFL talk. Right. As my friend Ollie said, 9 downloads in the last month from Ethiopia.
Terrific.
8 downloads from Vietnam.
That's the best one.
Yeah, Vietnam. Vietnamese. Obviously, people still there from the 70s. 7 downloads from Israel. Good to know they're cheering themselves up in that particular part of the world with a bit of the podcast. Here's a really interesting one. 7 downloads from Qatar.
Qatar.
The Bank of the Middle East, as it's
Bank
called.
of the Middle East. We seem to have cornered a large Asian and Middle East market.
Exactly, and then 5 additional ones from mainland Europe.
I like that's the way they put it as well as mainland Europe. Like, we're not going to break it down to the rest of the guys. They're not as interested in you, so we'll just split them all together in mainland Europe. Again, there's some fantastic UK-based football podcasts. You know, Tuesday Morning Football's terrific. You got the North London 40 guys, Gridiron Gentlemen, the other one I do, First Take UK, good plug there. But I don't think any of them have quite cornered the Qatar-Singapore market like we have.
Definitely not. 23 downloads in Singapore alone. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are worldwide. High five. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the news. This is what we do every week. I give you some things from the world itself, hopefully entertaining, just to get us cheered up to start off the show. So, okay, I've got 2 news items for you this week. Rather a slow week, unfortunately. Not that many funny ones. No funny ones out of Australia this week. Obviously, go back and download the old back catalogue of the UKEndZone football programme to find some of the funny news stories we always start the show with. So, here we go. A BBC photo of a men's cubicle with twin toilets at a Sochi Olympics venue has caused a Twitter storm in Russia. The picture from the Biathlon Centre, tweeted by Moscow correspondent Steve Rosenberg, was picked up by opposition leader Alexei Navalny, among others. Mr. Navalny, I'm saying that wrong, queried how the budget for the Games, said to be $50 billion, which is £30 billion, or 1.7 trillion rubles, has been, you know, remember in The Simpsons where there's that Russian guy going, a dollar is worth 12 rubles, 15 rubles, 75 rubles, I must go. But that's what that reminded me of then. But yeah, where has this $50 billion been spent? Russia? I wonder where the majority of that 50 billion has gone. Ollie?
Vodka. They are big fans of vodka. Some of them are morally bankrupt.
Exactly. So, I think a lot of that 50 billion is gone in white envelopes.
By the way, can I just say this? This hasn't got enough press attention throughout the news, and this is about the Sochi Olympics. Now, I'm not a massive, gay rights activist, but I thought the quote from the former Russian Prime Minister Putin was sensational this week when discussing gay athletes at the Olympics.
What did he say?
They asked him, because it's a contentious thing, obviously, with them going over, because Russia, frowns upon it and all that. And he says, and everyone was asking, will they be safe? He says, of course they'll be safe, as long as they don't try and touch our children. What a phenomenally ignorant statement to make from the former Russian Prime Minister there.
Oh, it's homophobia in this day and age. I just don't understand it. I really don't get it.
Olympics. They have the Olympics this year, and then Rio de Janeiro, who were, and this isn't even, a bad thing to say, it's just the truth, used to shoot homeless children on the street to get down homeless numbers. These are the 2 countries with the Olympics. Yeah,
and Brazil, of course, they might not even build their stadiums. I mean, how long have they had to do this? That's another point, Brazil World Cup. That would never happen in this country. And this is what frustrates me, right? Because people say the British are stiff upper lip, or we're boring, or we're anal, or we're this, that, and the other, or blah, 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 right? And I said this on shows before. Just because you have a culture that's a bit more casual than maybe British or American culture of building things on time to a plan, that's not an excuse for not building things on time to a plan. It's like the Italians and the Spanish, because they have a siesta and stuff like that. Culture is not an excuse for not doing things properly and not getting them done. I'm sorry, it's not an excuse. And it's like in Russia, corruption is not an excuse, obviously, for not getting things done. Anyway.
We just alienated our 5 listeners from mainland Europe.
Sorry,
I got a great story on corruption in that part of the world. I won't say who told me this story, but it is quite interesting, I'd say. They bought a plot. It's a big company. They bought a plot of land in Kazakhstan, of course, where Borat's from. And they bought it because they assumed that it would be cheap, and it was indeed cheap. But the amount of bribes that are not even informal, it's in print. You have to pay, so say it's a pound per square foot, you actually end up paying £100 per square foot because of the amount of bribes that have to go through the different networks.
I just don't get it. And what I want to just, I'm not, going back on what I just said, I just want to say that I'm not saying that people from all certain different countries are lazy or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that culture is not an excuse to behave in a certain manner. I just do not believe that's an excuse. But at the same time, the culture of some countries has led to wonderful things that wouldn't have happened if the culture had been different. So it is a very difficult thing to debate. But what we can all agree on is that corruption and homophobia is not okay.
And rife in Russia.
It is rife in Russia. Anyway, let's hope it's not rife with our 9 listeners in Ethiopia. Moving on. So this is the second news item, and then we'll carry on, slowly get some NFL chat. Okay. This is ridiculous. Scratch and sniff jeans may not seem like the most obvious clothing item, but that has not stopped designer Brandon Favre from creating some. The mint-scented jeans are currently being shipped to around 30 countries, including the UK. They're Teflon-coated to deflect stains, and essentially what they have is the coating is put on the denim and baked into the jeans, and it's got capsules, and each capsule contains perfume that release when it's scratched, and the capsules apparently can last at least 10 washes, according to the company, and they're retailing for about £96. Scratch and sniff jeans, Ollie.
I'm more interested than I was at first. At first I was like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know where they were going with the sniff and the scratch part. I regularly scrap and snitch my jeans, but, it doesn't bring out any minty fresh smells. If they could find a way of... It's the same thing with T-shirts. Why not kill two birds, one stone? And, deodorant companies make scratch and sniff T-shirts, that smell like Sure for Men or whatever, and happy days.
That's clever, but the problem is as well, if you're paying a premium for that and they don't last that long, then that's the issue. But very interesting. It's like, what was that program that was used to be on? Was it How To, or there's a kids program about science? I'm not sure whether it's How To.
This the one with Richard Hammond?
No, it wasn't. And it used to say, I don't know if you remember this, I'm 27, so maybe if you're around the same age as me, you might remember. There was like a sciencey program, and then at different points it went commercial break, and it showed you like weird inventions from Japan, like those spinning hats to keep the rain off.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what happened there. But look, before we get on to the NFL news, there's one other thing I just want to raise here that's been getting my goat this week, and my goat's name is Alan, and he's not very happy. Not true. I don't own a goat. Okay.
The Nihilists in Ethiopia may own the goat.
Yeah, if you're in Ethiopia and you have a goat, good on you. Tweet us if Twitter's out there and tell us the goat's name. Even send us a picture if you can. Okay. Right, what is the deal with the news just focusing on negative things all the time and putting negative spins on things? Now, I know the news is there to inform people about events across the globe, and lots of the ones that attract attention are negative. I understand that. But what really got up my nose today is the fact that unemployment has apparently dropped to 7.1%. A massive drop from, it was about 7.5. It's the biggest drop in a quarter ever, okay, in the UK. Now, what's going to happen if it gets to 7% is the Bank of England said they would consider changing the interest rate, i.e. raising them, if it got to 7%, which they didn't expect to happen until about 2016. Now, I know this is all economic, but just bear with me, okay? Essentially, a good news story about unemployment dropping to 7.1% is a headline on the ITN news, on ITV, on Channel 3, as it usually is in this country, is a headline news on there as not fantastic employment has dropped, we've just found out, to 7.1%. Oh no, the way they lead with it is employment is nearly at 7.0%, which means that the Bank of England might change the interest rates soon, which will impact employers, homeowners, etc. What the hell is wrong with these people? Why can't they just embrace a good story? Interest rates are eventually going to go back up anyway. We all know that. It's not like it was in the 80s and the 90s. Anyway, it's never going to be that bad again. It's because the systems have changed. Why the hell are we focusing on the negative all the time? It pisses me off, Oliver.
I feel like when I discuss the Houston Texans zone run scheme, must be how you feel. I got no idea what's going on here. The negative news thing, I guess. I've told you before, it's because you're looking at these things as news companies and they're not their commercial brands. You're talking about ITV, they got ad space to sell, they need viewers. What gets viewers, I said this to you earlier, it's not a local girl won spelling bee on ITV Granada. They need to find, even if it's just a car crash or something, that you could call minor in the grand scheme of things. People are more interested in tuning in to find out about that sort of stuff.
It is true. It just upsets me sometimes.
What would annoy me is the BBC. The supposed impartial ones. I mean, Sky News and those ones, and it's even worse for the American folk with Fox and that out there. I mean, I don't know how you'd last with Fox News and those different stations out there. The BBC would frustrate me if it was just consistent pummeling of negative news.
But the thing is, the BBC is consistent pummeling of negative news. They all are. impartiality does not refer to what the content of the news is and what the event you're reporting on is. It's how you report it. So you don't say this is so-and-so's fault or so-and-so's fault.
That's
what
I'm
it could
saying,
be X, Y, or Z.
They don't have a consistent demand to have to get viewers. Like, we all have to pay for the BBC regardless. So they should, in theory, have more of a split on positive and negative stories. They may not do. I'm just saying that would get my tail up if they didn't, follow that way of thinking. And in fairness to the BBC, half their negative news at the moment is about their former employees, like raping or, sexually abusing people.
Oh, sorry, I laughed then at the start about former employees. I didn't realise you were going to go to raping and sexual abusing, which is terrible. But another thing about that, and I'm so sorry we've not got to football talk yet. Honestly, this is a football podcast, but let's face it, we all want to know what's happening in the world.
It's the
interesting.
Off-season.
Exactly. And let's discuss these things. At the end of the day, podcasts are a thing you can listen to that you can...
Come on now.
Yeah, you can sit back and you can think about issues and then you can tweet us about them and we can discuss them on Twitter. This is what the world is all about. Connectivity, connecting information. Anyway, so many of these people that come out of the woodwork and say they've been sexually abused by people. Now, I'm not saying they're lying because I have got no idea. But just the amount that have come out. Again, we've discussed this previously. And then some of these things get quashed and stuff. And I was just thinking, if somebody gets put up for some kind of rape or sexual abuse, something like that, which is obviously an abhorrent thing to do and is up there with murder in my opinion. It's terrible. But if they are completely proved innocent, and the person that made the accusation is proved to be completely fabricating their story, is there a comeuppance for the person that's fabricated their story?
Yeah, I think they get wasted police time and things of that nature, but it's not relative to the accusation. I've always been a fan of this. I don't know what you think about this. Newspapers, they publish these allegations. They should bring in legislation that says the amount of news space that you put in your newspaper for a story, if it's proven to be wrong, you have to dedicate to an apology. So if you do the full front page, laying into a celebrity, saying they did this, that, the other, they're taking drugs or whatever, and it's proven to be false, the whole front page should just be, we are sorry, X, Y, Z. And then if it's just a small column, the same column space for the apology.
That's interesting because usually you have corrections in a newspaper.
And they're tiny.
The
editor's footnote.
Yeah, we spelt this wrong or something like that. So you've got all these articles accusing these people of the terrible things, and then just 2 years later, in corrections in the wrong, we apologise, this was never true. It's like in The Simpsons, it's a terrible thing to say. It's like when Homer is supposedly beating up that guy who's interviewing him after he's supposedly touched that babysitter's bum. And they mess up the timing on it so it looks like Homer's beating him. And then this happens and he goes, Mr. Simpson, no! And then it pauses and he goes, dramatization may not have happened. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's talk some football, Ollie, and whatever questions you've got from the viewership or comments, listenership, before we go into Robbo in the field.
I mean, there hasn't been a massive amount, and I guess that large part's due to, we're in for a ball week, everyone's having a bit of a rest, and there's not that much news going on. One question I have for you, and I want to ask Neil that in a bit, is that every single person in the world seems to have ruled themselves out the Cleveland Brown job. I mean, people are just refusing to even interview. Adam Gase, who's an unknown offensive coordinator to most of the Denver Broncos. Peyton Manning fell into his lap, and now he's considered for head coaching jobs. And he's saying, I'm not even talking to the Cleveland Browns. Josh McDaniels, whose best mate is the general manager, said, I'm not talking to the Cleveland Browns anymore. What the heck's going on in Cleveland?
Does it not seem to you that if you say the team name Cleveland Browns, just if you're listening to the podcast now, I want you to pause the podcast and just say to yourself, Cleveland Browns out loud. Do it now. Pause it now. Okay, you've just rejoined us after saying Cleveland Browns. How did it make you feel? Because it made me feel very negative, cold, and slightly dirty. Now, maybe that's this whole thing. Somebody needs to get in there and turn that image around. Because I'm not saying Cleveland Browns are a bad team or a horrible franchise or anything like that. I'm not saying, but they have this aura around them, and not a good one. So, I can see why people are turning it down. Would you rather go there or stay in a nice, cushy, maybe coordinator job you've got somewhere else and wait for a head coaching job at a different team? I'd rather go anywhere else.
Well, I'm never a fan of the waiting game. People always say that. Things change so much year to year. If an opportunity comes up, there's only 32 jobs in the world as the head coach of an NFL franchise. Take it. It's league of parity. If you start at the bottom, you should be getting to the top. It's the way the league is designed. Why walk into a cushy middle of the range job? It's not the way the league's set up to work. And my thing is with Cleveland is that it's the best job to go into. There is no better one. There are no expectations. There's a fantastic fan base. And if you even get to the playoffs, you are literally drinking in Ohio for free for the rest of your life. That's all they would like. A 9-7 season, you may get a statue. That's not an overstatement. It is entirely plausible. The issue they have is that front office is a joke at the moment. I mean, they fired a guy after 1 year because they wanted Chip Kelly and missed out on him, then panic bought in Rob Chudzinski, and then get rid of him. Who's going to go there now? They just dug themselves a huge hole. They should probably crawl back to Chudzinski and say, well, we're still paying you, so come back and coach the team.
I'll leave you with this thought on the Cleveland Browns. I bought Madden recently, the most recent Madden game, and wanted to start a career as a quarterback, so I started as a quarterback. And obviously I wanted to put myself on the team with like the worst quarterback or one of the worst teams, so I knew I'd be starting, etc., etc. I put myself on the Jets over the Browns.
Really?
Yeah.
With Pete Johnson, that owner?
I took the Jets. I am now playing quarterback for the Jets, and I tell you what, I am ripping the shit up. But just so you know, I couldn't bring myself to put on that brown hat, or orange hat, as Damashek would say, because it's not brown. Okay, Ollie, anything else?
Yeah, Craig Morley at Giglane Craig. I note your disparaging comments about my Vikings and Rick Spielman, for which I shall graciously forgive you as I am nice. I think this is directed at me for a slant at Rick Spielman the other week. But if you were Rick Spielman, what would you do with the 8th pick in this year's draft? Fantasy Spielman time. I'm worried.
Fantasy Spielman time. I love that. Well done, Giglane, mate.
Like that. I'm very worried about the Vikings this year in the draft because last year they went and got 3 first-round picks, of which only one of them was a first-round talent. One of them developed into being a little bit of a stud in that Cordero Patterson. He looks real special.
I really like him.
He looks better than Percy Harvin. That trade looks better and better by the minute. That was a great move from them. They worry me because Spielman, people forget, was the one who picked Christian Ponder, yet Leslie Frazier got the boot. That makes no sense. He didn't pick Christian Ponder. He wasn't even there when they picked Ponder. So he gets another opportunity to pick a quarterback. At 8, I'm guessing Manziel and Bridgewater are gone. They don't have any firepower to move up. To me, they smack of a team that's going to panic and take someone like Derek Carr from Fresno State, who a lot of people are high on. I just don't think he's very good. I think it's too many mental mistakes. We can break him down over the coming weeks in the process, and I'll give some more thoughts on him. But they smack to me of going down another quarterback hole, and we'll be in the same situation 3 years down the line, and Spielman will probably still be in that job.
Maybe they trade back. Maybe the Vikings trade back if they're sensible, or they may reach. Let's face it, they reach with Ponder. So if they've got if they've got a propensity to do that, then they'll probably do it again.
You say if they're smart. I've met Rick Spielman when they came over to London, and I'm not even trying to be insulting. I felt like I knew more football than him. I don't know if that's because he's supposed to be a businessman. I would not allow him to pick players in a draft.
It is interesting. This whole American football team, NFL dynamic of business and football knowledge. You kind of have to have both because there's the salary cap. There's all these different implications you've got to think about. So you got to have a mix. It's tricky, isn't it? Perfect situation is where you don't have to have a mix. Well, you still have to control the cap. I suppose it's Green Bay because there's never ever going to be any business kind of pressure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. That's a true thing because Ted Sundquist, of course, we all know well, was the finalist for the Jets general manager job last year and missed out because he was the football guy and John Idzik was the businessman who had no player personnel involvement where he was at before, and yet he got the job because of the salary cap. So it all comes into it. Last one then is a text I received from Maines earlier today. Great writer, UKEndZone.com. Maines makes you money taking an off week. There's no bets to be had on the Pro Bowl, he says. But Aaron Rodgers, he's discussing here, how can you, Thomas Moore, dub Aaron Rodgers the greatest of all time, the GOAT, when he's only had 1 good playoff run and 3 good regular seasons?
You know what? It's very interesting that Mainsy says that because I think these questions are going to start being asked of Rodgers now. He has won 1. He's had continually no running game. The season where they went 15-1 was really, I think, that was the season, obviously, after the Super Bowl victory, when the Packers really could have, and Rodgers really could have cemented himself, but they ran into the New York Giants and a front four that could actually just get to Rodgers every 5 seconds. The reason why I put Rodgers as the greatest of all time, I'm not saying he's the greatest of all time yet. I'm saying he will be, just because at the moment I see with Lacey coming in, although I know, Ollie, you've got your opinions on him fading away. With Lacey coming in, the receiver turnover is still good in Green Bay. They've still got talent out there. I think they can match it with anyone. They just need to sort out the defense. He's got a window, I think, of a long period of time where he can win titles, and he is that good that, he can carry teams by himself to win titles. If he'd have stayed fit this season, God knows what would have happened. I'm not sure it probably would have ended in the Super Bowl picture because of how bad the defense was. But maybe they would have won more games. I'm just saying, I really think he's been held back by bad defenses. Not everything's been created around him. He's made Jared Boykin and different people look good, better than they are, kind of in a Tom Brady style. And fundamentally, the reason I'm saying he's the best quarterback ever is he might end up being the winningest or whatever, but which I hate as a word because I don't think it's a real word, winningest. Yeah, but it's because he can do things and make throws that other people can't make. That's why I think he's the quarterback. It's purely that. He does things that I just don't think other people can do. Ollie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I always call him the most indefensible quarterback in the league. I never say he's the best. I still think Brady is the best, and I think this season proved that. But he's got the best skill set, without a doubt. And everyone will say, well, Kaepernick's indefensible because you don't know about the run and pass. Look, you hit that guy up in the chest a few times. He's not running the ball anymore. We've seen that a couple of times, and he is not great from the pocket. Rodgers is as mobile as those guys because he creates more space than those guys and then can launch the ball when he pulls the trigger down the field as far as anyone. That's what makes him so indefensible. He, rightly as you said, makes throws no one else can make. I think his regular show is the back shoulder throw that everyone tries to develop. He just throws that naturally. And it's just, defensive backs can't make a play on the ball at the back shoulder. It's just impossible. So he does things no one else can do. And for me, he's in a fortunate position of a guy like a Brady's career arc of the last 10 years when questions haven't been asked as much as maybe they should have done, because he'll be routinely in the playoffs because he's so dominant, and he is nowhere near the weak point. Manning, the reason why people criticize Manning is not because he lost and there was no talent around him like Brady doesn't get as criticized as him. He was loaded with Hall of Famers at the wide receiver position. And the defense was alright in both those situations, who had Von Miller and Champ Bailey last year. Whereas Rodgers, like you say, I question the coaching now. I thought they did a great job of making him who he is. I question it now with McCarthy. He really started to worry me in this past season. And then the defense has always been horrid, predicated on making turnovers. The years they don't do it, they seem to get blown out in the playoffs. So it's never about him, is my thought process. And he's, as I say, the most indefensible one. So he's got a great chance to be right up there, top 5 in that discussion anyway.
I don't see any Hall of Famers, wide receivers Rodgers has ever played with, to be quite honest. The only Hall of Famer I've seen him play with at all on his team is Charles Woodson, when he was on the defensive side of the ball, and that's when they went to the Super Bowl, when the defense was ranked number 1. So if you're looking at it that way, you could say, well, it's about the defense. It's not necessarily about Rodgers dragging them up. So interesting point. But again, I will return to Rodgers throws the ball from certain positions he gets himself in his body, and completely not how you're supposed to do it, not how you cut it. And the way he's ridiculous. His arm is a toy, as Larry Fitzgerald once said.
He can contort his body like no one else in the league. I mean, Russell Wilson can do it a little bit, but he's got a much smaller frame. It's probably easier. He's more agile. I don't know how Rodgers does it. I mean, that can't be taught. That's something he just picked up at Cal one day when he's getting snotted around.
Probably, yeah, something like that. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on to our roving reporter Robbo in the field now, because he always sets us up with some good questions and debating points. And then, of course, after that, we will break into some serious chat about the conference championship games which took place in the last week with Neil Dutton. So let's hand it over to Robbo in the field.
It's Robbo in the field.
He's back for another week. We can't keep him away. He lingers around like a bad smell. It's our great reporter, Robbo in the field. Robbo, how are you, sir?
A bit depressed this week, unfortunately. Obviously, the events of Sunday have taken a toll, and I'm with what's-his-face drinking from the bottle, so pretty miserable.
Pretty miserable, obviously, because he is a Patriots fan. There you go. You can follow our roving reporter, Robbo in the field. You can follow him on Twitter at Andy_BCC_Robbo. So make sure you hit him up on Twitter. And what Robbo does every week is he joins us and gives us some questions of the day. He tries to dig deep and find the debating points of this week. And obviously, as we reach the end of the season and go into the off-season, Robbo is going to have to be more creative. So he's got some issues to talk through today, looking for Ollie's opinion on them, as always. So, Robbo, I will hand you the floor.
Absolutely. Well, as Tom's aware, I'm a fan of my receivers having big hands. And I've noticed that my binky from a few weeks ago, the tight end Fidowitz from, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Iowa, has the largest hands of any tight end at the Senior Bowl. And for completeness out of the wide receivers, the guy from Vanderbilt, Jordan Matthews, has the largest hands of wide receivers. So does Ollie agree that big hands are vital for receiving targets, or just an added bonus? And does he see any impact receivers at either position at this year's Senior Bowl?
Okay, I'll start with the second part, if that's okay, Robbo. Impact receivers at this year's Senior Bowl. There's not really any impact players at this year's Senior Bowl. I got to speak to 2 scouts on Monday about what's going on there in Mobile, Alabama. Nearly to the depression you're talking about some of the talent of the seniors this year. I'd say of maybe sleepers at the receiver position this year, you got Kane Coulter. He's out of Northwestern. He's more of a slot guy. Think even smaller than Wes Welker. So the frame's a concern, but he's a productive player. And then you've got Ryan Grant out of Tulane, who's a real project guy. He's got a huge frame. I think he's another former basketball player. Massive frame, but really needs to add on some bulk before the combine. So there's some of the seniors that I think you will see go in the later rounds due to their performances this week. But by no stretch of the imagination any big names, because we had 92 underclassmen declare. So that's where all the talent is this year. The big hands isn't a big thing to me. I always talk about the catching radius. That's more of a thing that I'm looking for. It comes down largely to wingspan. I think wingspan's a more important attribute that I'm looking for when we go into the combine than the hand size. You know, if you take an NBA example with basketball, Kevin Durant is 6'8", but he's got a 7'6" wingspan. It means he can shoot the ball every one. And Rob Gronkowski has probably the biggest, if not the second biggest, behind Jimmy Graham wingspan in the entire league. Gives them that huge catching radius. They can go up and get the ball anywhere. Des Bryant has a huge catching radius, huge wingspan. You don't want to find these guys, Robbo, who have what we call these alligator arms, tiny little wingspan, or that they may have giant hands like Chris Carter. If they can't go up and get it and locate the ball, you know, you're in serious trouble. So the wingspan will come through.
It's got this image of like the alligator arms, but also like a T-Rex playing wide receiver. He's throwing in the ball, he just keeps bouncing off his body. Also, from my perspective, to add something to that question as well, Rob, I know you're probably going to talk about hands catching as well, rather than catching into the body. You share your thoughts with us in a second, but I always think that big hands are quite important with quarterbacks because it's literally just a gripping the ball thing. And it's actually, you imagine what you are when you throw those little vortex things that you throw on the beach when you go on holiday. You know, if your big hands can fit over the ball, then it's good for a quarterback. Maybe not so important for the receivers. But Robbo, your thoughts?
Well, the reason why I'm a fan of the big hands is for the catching in traffic. I think if you're able to stick your paws up there and one of them wraps around the majority of the ball, I always think back to another bad day for the Patriots, Hakeem Nicks in the Super Bowl about 2 years ago, and just the fact that the ball looked tiny in his hands, and when you're watching some of the guys go up and try and stop him from catching the ball, it just didn't look like a fair competition because you could just pluck the ball out of the air, and even if they managed to land a shot on him, the hands were wrapped so tightly around the ball that it was just so hard to make a play and break up the pass. So that's probably influenced my thought process a bit more than most perhaps, but that's where it comes from.
Okay, interesting, very interesting, Robbo. And everybody that's listening now, if you're a man, what I want you to do is take your hand, spread it out, and so your 4 fingers are together and your thumb is in the air at a right angle. Take that out. Now, apparently, the distance from that base of your thumb to the tip of your index finger is quite relevant, let's say, in inverted commas. And I'll leave that with you. Next question, Robbo.
Okay, this is the Pro Bowl related one. Obviously, it's a new format this year, but in the spirit of looking for gimmicks in order to make the game interesting, does Ollie think that it would add to the value of the occasion if Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders were to play against each other for a series or two in the Pro Bowl. They seem to make a lot of noise as to how they still fancy themselves. So from my perspective, why not?
Yeah, why not? I mean, the Pro Bowl's nothing to me. One, it's my birthday on Sunday, so I wouldn't watch anyway, but I never watch the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl's just, it's for the players, and I get that. It's fine. I like that the quarterbacks take the, offensive line with them for the week to Honolulu and they have a fun time. But the best players aren't there because they're in the Super Bowl, and the rest of them drop out. They all decide, I don't want to play. I can't be bothered going. So guys like Alex Smith gets, Pro Bowl appearances. He's had a good season, but Pro Bowl worthy? I don't think so. It's just it's a nothing event. It's like 7-on-7. This new format's embarrassing considering the way they've gone about it with you pick captains and then you can't pick quarterbacks till last or whatever ludicrous things they put in. So if, Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders want a Super Bowl or whatever, that's fine by me. I won't be watching anyway.
Yeah, Pro Bowl doesn't matter to me either, to be quite honest. Also, talking about people that aren't at the Pro Bowl, Aaron Rodgers wasn't even picked. But there you go, he was injured. But just for me, it's this whole Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders thing. I mean, I feel bad for Jerry Rice because I feel Jerry Rice actually acts with some decorum, whereas I feel like Deion Sanders is a complete clown. Now, I'm going to call out Deion Sanders right now because this is just my opinion. If you don't agree with me, then you don't agree with me. Give me some abuse on Twitter. I just feel like Deion Sanders, he was this fantastic football player. Yeah, he was a brilliant cover corner. He's quicker than anyone. Had all these fantastic skills. He was brilliant. He's come into the media and he's this big, loud character, and it hit, first of all. It was a home run. Everybody loved it. But recently, it just become evidently even more clear to me, especially when you stick him next to people like Marshall Falk, who are actually giving you insightful analysis on games and predictions that generally actually come true. Talking about, he said Doug Baldwin would have a massive game this week, and he did. But you've got Deion Sanders there that just, when they do the highlights, is just going, Russell Wilson's making this play now, says whoever's presented the program, and he goes, Russell, last name Wilson. That's all he does. He just gives them funny nicknames and doesn't give you any insight at all and just repeats what other people says. He is an absolute clown. I do not want him on the network anymore. I don't want to watch him every day because it annoys me, and I feel bad for the other people that have to work with him because I feel like he is bringing them down. And that is my opinion of Deion Sanders. I love all the other guys. Falk, Irvin, Rice, as I said, I feel bad for him that he's having to go up against this guy. I think it's just ridiculous. Anyway, Robbo.
I'm literally speechless. I can't imagine what you made of Leon Sandcastle last year.
Bullshit.
Oh, we hated it. We hated it. It was probably the thing we hated most throughout the entire year, Tom.
It was awful. It was cringeworthy. And this gets us on to another point. We're going on rants today, Ollie. This is what it's all about. Some of the things this is an American thing we talked about with Adam Rank about comedy in America being watered down to a certain extent. Apologies to American listeners who are tuning in now. I'm just saying there's a propensity in the American media and American comedy to have something that's going to suit all people. That's what we and Adam Rank talked about a month or so back. And this is the case where you get these things, and Sandcastle's out there doing this, and Eisen's laughing his ass off, and Mooch is laughing his ass off, and all this, that, and the other. None of it looks real to me, that laughter. It is all just so forced, and it's embarrassing. It is. When Rich Eisen does his run at the combine every time, that's funny. And then Mayock dissects it, and they put the different people running alongside him, superimposed like the linemen and stuff like that. It's awesome. That's really funny. This forced crap, it's embarrassment.
I call it effort comedy. It's in the same way that you often get a character in a film. If anyone's a fan of The League, the TV show, I think Taco's effort comedy. Like, they're really writing to try and make him funny, and it just isn't, and it just doesn't work. It's when it's more seamless and it's just like banterous. It's best when it seems like these are four genuine guys who played the game, Hall of Famers, all, within their own right are funny guys and good personalities. That's why they're on the TV. And it's like they're sat around the bar, and yet they can educate everyone who's tuning in and listening. Kurt Warner's probably the best at that at the moment. Mm.
Yeah, definitely. And that's how it should be. You don't have to force this crap, and that's what annoys me. Anyway, Robbo, back to you.
Okay. Now, I think that Seattle, and I despise them, will win the Super Bowl because they've got all of the key cogs that I was banging on about last week in place, whereas I don't think that Denver don't. And for the record, I thought that the winner of the NFC game last week would probably end up winning the Super Bowl anyway. Does Ollie agree with me? And if not, for the sake same reasons, then what does he think? Which team does he think has the edge and why?
I don't know, we're a long way away. I'm still mulling it over, Robert, to give you a definitive answer. What I'd say is that I was so blown away and impressed by Peyton Manning and that whole crew last week. The offensive line is nasty at the moment. And, you know, the Seahawks have this dominant secondary with Earl Thomas, Chancellor and Sherman. The other side with Browner isn't as strong as they like to think it is. I think that the Broncos will be able to spread them out, and they have so many different weapons. They can come at you in so many different ways. And if they're running these isolation pick plays trying to, you know, destroy people's jaws, then maybe the Broncos can pull this thing through. I'm not sure yet which way I'm going to go. Will the weather play an impact? I'm not so sure. At the moment, I can't really bet against Peyton Manning. He carved up the Patriots. Now, they did not look good, and we'll get onto that in a little while, Tom, with Neil when he comes on. But he just carved them apart. And I know that this Seahawks, you know, defensive backfield is supposed to be dominant. The Broncos have too many guys who can get off press coverage. You know, Thomas is a big man. Decker's a big guy. No one can stop Julius Thomas one-on-one. They've got the perfect matchup on their side of the field to take away what the Seahawks do best.
Yeah, and I'm going to reserve my judgment as well, too, to next week's podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you tune into that. Over to you, Robbo.
Okay, final question. With the bad weather forecast, do you think that, I think we briefly touched on this a few weeks ago, do you think that a snowball would be a good finale to the season, or do you think that, you know, rather than having these perfect, in inverted commas, football conditions in the dome or in a hot weather venue, do you think a snowball would be a fitting finale to the season?
A snowball would be a fitting finale. I've got a couple of reasons why. Number one, it's not a football game, it's a show. It can make me cringe when they see all the personalities there. Football fans don't get to go anyway. So it'd be quite nice to see those really rich people that Goodell's invited and have got tickets through like Citibank and that have to sit out in the snow. And what that may do is mean that they just say, oh, I can't be bothered. I'll sit in, you know, at home. So then real football fans do get to go to the Super Bowl, which would be a nice little twist for once as well. And I do like to see them being tested in the elements. I always hear these, you know, these experts, Warren Sapp's big on this sort of thing when they're like, well, we want to see the best team play the best team and find out who's the best without the conditions interfering. Well, you know, both teams have to play with the conditions. It would probably favour, it would definitely favour Seattle. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not picking just because of Peyton Manning, but I would like to see a snowball. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm all in for a snowball. I want to see those moguls in the stands who have got free tickets freeze their asses to death. Robbo, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just a sort of football-related look-alike. For you fans of Celebrity Big Brother, I think Dappy looks like a miniature version of Colin Kaepernick, and that's it.
Is this Dappy from the Dubs?
N-Dubs, na-na-na, ooh, na-na. My Dappy impression.
Kaepernick, yeah. I've seen the things going around of the Squidward Kaepernick connection, which is probably fair.
What?
Squidward looking like Colin Kaepernick. There's lots of them.
Who's Squidward?
It's from SpongeBob SquarePants, the guy with the nose.
I did never watch SpongeBob SquarePants. 7 years too late, mate, for that, for me. I'm sorry. I was Thomas the Tank Engine, I was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and on a good day, Postman Pat, if I was lucky, and I'd behaved. But, no, never was a SpongeBob. Robbo?
No, me neither. Thomas Tank Engine, Postman Pat, Fireman Sam, all day.
Fireman Sam, yeah, he's always on the move. That's going to be in my head for the rest of the night. Okay, Robbo, it's a pleasure. Listeners, make sure you hit him up at Andy_BCC_Robbo. What a stupid Twitter name that is. Ow, well, it's apt because he's a stupid man. Robbo, it's been a pleasure, sir. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.
Cheers, thanks a bunch.
It's Robbo in the field.
That was Robbo in the field, Ollie. Some good debating points there from the man himself.
Always, we find the different things. Robbo gives the people what he wants. We give the people what they need with the answers. Perfect stuff.
There you go. That's what it's all about. So now, as always, to talk about what happened in last week's games, and usually it's to preview next week's games, but we're going to save our Super Bowl preview for the next show, in the next podcast next week. But now we're going to dial up Neil Dutton, the man who himself is somewhere lost in the northwest of the country. We don't know where he is because he's somewhere, but his internet's always failing. So let's call him on his phone and let's give him a dial and see if he's there. So, dialing Neil Dutton. Neil Dutton, come in, Neil Dutton. This is always a fun activity, isn't it, Ollie?
This is the best part. Hello.
Hello. That's what he says when he picks up. He goes, hello. Hello. Everyone do your Neil Dutton impression. Hello. Dutton, are you there? Dutton. Hello.
Hello.
Hey! Neil, how the devil are you?
Oh, fighting fit and ready to lie down.
Marvellous stuff as always. Neil Dutton is our fantastic fantasy football writer. Amongst other things, you can find him on Twitter at ndutton13. And of course, you can find his work on UKEndZone.com. So, Neil, as always, we're going to review what happened last week. And let's go in chronological order of the games. And let's start with Denver's victory over the New England Patriots, 26-16. Now, as Ollie is a Patriots fan, I'm just going to leave him for a second so he can have a good rant at this in a minute. My thoughts I'll save as well for a little bit later. And I want to start this week with Neil Dutton. Neil, give me a breakdown of this game, what you thought the key things were, what you take away from this moving forward.
The key things were, the most obvious for my money is that the Patriots were not able in any way, shape or form to get near to Peyton Manning. And the commentators kept saying, Peyton Manning, when he's not under pressure, is a very dangerous quarterback. Well, thanks for that. That's most insightful. Who'd have thought a quarterback under no pressure might make good throws?
No way.
I learned something. Peyton was allowed pretty much to get on with his business as he wanted. Long drives, killing the clock. And on the other side, Tom Brady was erratic. There were several throw situations where there was wide open receivers and he missed them. Then there was times when he's targeting Matt Slater. I thought he was a character from Saved by the Bell, so I was a bit confused. Obviously Talib went down injured again for the second championship game in a row. Whether it was deliberate or not, I'll let the judges and me decide. But ultimately, the best team on the day did win for my money.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way on that one, Neil, to be quite honest. I think it was the best team, and I know Ollie's going to dig into here, as he's already mentioned so far in the podcast, about it's amazing that New England got this far. I personally, the thing that I did take out of this was, regardless of that, I just was disappointed with Brady to a certain extent. I love Tom Brady. I really, really do rate Tom Brady. I think he is, at this current point in time, the best quarterback of all time. That is my honest opinion. And I was disappointed with his performance, and I was disappointed with the game, really. It was just a bit of a damp squib to me. Ollie?
Yeah, it was. I think it's a bit harsh to be disappointed with Brady, though. I mean, who is he throwing to for one? And it's not just the names, it's the skill set. None of them can get off man coverage. It's just what the Broncos rolled out all game. They had Edelman, so he can get off man coverage.
Ollie, he missed some wide open throws.
He did, but this is the thing. This is why we play the regular season. Denver fought all season to get home field advantage. What does Denver's home field advantage bring them? Altitude. Brady sailed on them. He never underthrew one with an arm that's been questioned by people. He sailed them. Are
you absolute right? I'm going to stop you right there. You absolutely kidding me that altitude caused those throws?
I'm saying that he missed them. Yeah, altitude plays a part. Of course it does.
No, the thinness of the air is not going to affect that much. I'm calling you out on this one, Colin.
So why can people kick 60-yard field goals in Denver and not nowhere else? Because the altitude. The ball moves quicker.
When you're getting that much loft on it and air in it, that's not happening when you're throwing the balls to people 20 yards on a dart. You're cutting through the same type of air. If you're lofting a long way, that's when you're getting your trajectory angles up, and that's when you can get further distance. If you're throwing something on a frozen rope in a dart and it's going over people, then that's because you've overthrown it.
No, he sailed down the field a couple of times. He didn't miss too many other throws that were wide open throws. He missed the Slater one. He missed Vereen. He did miss some throws. He wasn't great. He wasn't spectacular. But again, he's thrown to Edelman. Vereen's now essentially a wide receiver. Austin Colley's on the team. I think they cut him 6 times themselves this year, and he's had about 50 concussions in his career. And there's Michael Omanama-Nui, who's a fullback playing tight end. So he's thrown to no one. Amendola, no show. Slater, no show. He's a special team captain just out of nicety because he's been there for a long time. And that's it. So it comes down more to McDaniels didn't call a great game. Brady didn't take command of the offense the way he should have done it, changing plays at the line, trying to get people open. And it just came down to that Denver are just a better team. They're just all around better. I thought, Neil, you actually did Peyton a disservice to just point out that he wasn't getting pressure. He was sensational. I think that is genuinely the best game I've ever seen him play, from the standpoint that he took ego out of it. I really think that Manning at times in the playoffs has really brought his ego to the forefront. Everything's about him. He has to throw the touchdown passes. He did it in the regular season he'd ride the run down to the 1 yard line, and then he's, throwing a pass from the 1 yard line to try and get himself the nice touchdowns. I thought he took his ego out of it. 400 yards. He just hit the man that was open, and nearly all of them were. I thought he was sensational. The Broncos are a better team. They deserve to win the game. They probably should have won by more, and that's what worries me for them going forward.
Yeah, good, very good points, Ollie. And I'm arguing with you just because it's good for the listeners. They like to hear us argue. Neil, more thoughts on this game, please.
The number of people on Twitter who feel they have to educate the rest of the world as to what Omaha means. Can that stop? Peyton has not explained it, but as people are saying, Eli's been doing it for years. Lovely. So Eli must have discovered it. Who knew? Eli, the king of quarterbacks. The big takeaway I've come out is that, as you say, we pretty much agreed that the better team won. I think the Belichick's comments about Welker after the game, saying he took out to leave deliberately, it strikes me as a little bit odd. As I think it was Ross Tucker who said, why would you send if you're going to go out and nail someone, why would you send a receiver with a history of concussions to do the suicide mission? Doesn't strike me as logical. Yeah, but I think the point really was not that he was sent out to do that, but he took it upon himself to do it. Well, it's possible, but it's probably just another chapter in the non-relationship between Belichick and Wes Welker. Yeah, I'm just stirring up controversy now. I've got nothing left. I've got one meaningful game, and then I'm going to have to talk to my family of a Sunday night. I've got there's nothing left. I'll have to bring my daughter up doing things. I don't know what to do. Well, I'll leave you just to be emotionally distraught there for a minute. Ollie, do you want to finish this one up and sum this up by writing not the obituary on New England, but just where New England goes from here?
Well, of course, Tom, we'll break down in the 32 in 32 series. I'll get into an hour of discussion with someone in some form.
With yourself.
It will probably be just me discussing. I could go on for hours. They're in a perfectly fine place. People are worrying about free agency and all this jazz. That will they be able to keep Brandon Spikes? Will they be able to keep Akeem Talib? Of course, well, they got all the cap room. They got about $30 million in cap room. They only pay guys that they like. So they're not just going to go and pay, big name players like Hakeem Nicks because they don't know them. They only pay guys that they know through the draft or cheap players. So they're in a perfectly fine place. They're going to get Will Ford back, Mayo back. Brady will come back for another year, and as long as he's there, they'll make the championship game.
There you go. That's that one broken down. Denver go through to the Super Bowl to play the Seattle Seahawks. As you all now know, unless that's a spoiler. Sorry about that. But I think it's okay to talk about it now. It's been several days. Seattle Seahawks, they are through to the Super Bowl with a 23-17 win over their divisional rivals, the San Francisco 49ers, in the NFC Championship game this past Sunday. Incredible game. Wonderful watching, a great advert for the NFL, to be quite honest, across the world. I'm going to start with Ollie on this one. Ollie, what did you take out of this? What happened? What are the key things? We'll get to Richard Sherman later. Park that. Talk about the game. How did Sherman do? Well, he was on the winning team.
He was on the winning team. He's a good player. This game was like you said rightly, it was a bit all over the place. It was a great advert. It just strikes me now, I don't want to have the discussion about Colin Kaepernick and about is he the guy and all this stuff. This is what his second year playing as the starting quarterback, only his first year as the true starter. I think he's going to be absolutely fine. There's just issues I have with him with fundamentals. The throw motion, everything is so all over the place. It does really limit them. I think when it gets to the crunch time, he is too eager to take off. To the point where there's been so many people this week saying, why is he not on the move and running when he takes every snap? It just, I think the better team again, I'm all over the place here.
Okay, I'll tell you this. If Kaepernick's the starter, it's my opinion, I want to see the main course, because I'm not happy with the starter, to be quite honest. Let's leave you just to think about what you want to say, Ollie, for a minute. Gather your thoughts. Neil, talk to me.
Well, for my money, watching the game on Sunday, the first half we saw the strengths of Colin Kaepernick, the running, the making people miss the big galloping strides downfield like a big deranged gazelle in pads and helmets. But at the back of your mind, there's always he's not throwing that well, but there's the threat. And then in the second half, when he seemed to go back into his shell and the running wasn't there, the inaccuracies of the throws came in. I mean, even the touchdown throw, absolutely remarkable. Any quarterback coach is probably looking at it saying, oh my God, he's just thrown with 2 feet off the ground. What's he doing? It was, I'm not saying he was the reason they lost, but it came down again that towards the end, when they were in a position to get the win, he didn't, for the second playoff game in a row that they've lost, they tried that play again and it didn't work. And in the second half, I mean, as a pure quarterback point of view, I don't think you can argue he had a particularly good game. From a scrambling point of view, first half, he was tremendous.
Yeah, that's true. Ollie, have you gathered your thoughts?
I've gathered my thoughts. See, I have major questions now over Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. It's more about them when it matters most, because last year, people forget how bad their play calling was at the back end of the Super Bowl. That was essentially what cost them at the end of the day. The play calling was atrocious in the fourth quarter on Sunday. I just don't know what's going through their minds when they think, let's run a fly pattern outside to Michael Crabtree, who's being covered by Richard Sherman. I don't know where they get these ideas from. I thought Kaepernick was good, as Neil said. I think the threat of the run helps, but then teams seem to overcome it. I can't think.
And also at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, what you can hear is...
That's what I mean.
Yeah, you can hear Neil Dutton's daughter giggling, it seems. Neil, why is she so happy?
She's just come in and she's just seen me.
That's cute.
So, Kate doesn't look happy. She's just come in, but Zoe's very happy.
Well, anyone would be happy to see you, Neil. It's obviously a...
Well, yes.
Ollie, okay, how about we move on from the game itself then, because, Seattle Seahawks, let's move on from there. Let's talk about Richard Sherman. Ollie, do you have any specific thoughts? God, Neil, what is going on in your house?
I can't think with what's going on.
Okay.
The hearing, the sensitivity of these headphones is absolutely incredible.
Just some breathing down my ears.
Oh my God.
I'm actually not allowed. I have to do that on this way because I'm not allowed to do it in phone calls to people anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're experiencing as well is we had Neil on the phone and we've transitioned to Skype because we had an issue with the technology, and obviously we've edited it so seamlessly you shouldn't have noticed, but you will have noticed it clearly. Anyway.
We don't edit this out.
No, I'm not editing this out at all. It's got to stay in. This is a real podcast. This is a podcast from the streets. Oliver Connolly, share your thoughts on Dick Sherman.
My thoughts on Dick Sherman were basically that I thought there were a lot of people getting up on Mount Pius, as Dave Damashek likes to say, and I wasn't happy at all with some of the big name people on stations like ESPN Radio, Colin Coward, who I used to have a lot of respect for. They come out so quickly with the word thug, and it just has, they may not want it to come out that way. To me, it did have racial overtones because, he's black and he has dreads and he's tattooed up to the hilt. The guy was in the heat of the moment. You stick a camera under his face. You ask him a question. He gave a response. I didn't like the choke sign. I didn't like the going up to Crabtree and getting in his face post game. I think it took away from the Seahawks' performance. And he should have really been celebrating one of the best plays of his career, if not the play of his career, with his teammates who, battled to go there. What I appreciate about Sherman, though, is that I was all ready to lay into him like everyone else. But then when you read the Monday Morning Quarterback article that was up on the mmqb.com, saying that he acknowledges that he only calls himself the best cornerback in the game because of the situation he's in. Because for my money, he's not the best cornerback in the game. He's the best cornerback because he plays with the two best safeties by a mile in the game in Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, and it's a hellacious pass rush up front. But I like that he acknowledges that, and he only says, I'm the best right now because of who I'm playing with. So I appreciate that. But I keep hearing the word thug and classless. The guy's from Stanford. He had a 3.9 GPA, which is 0.1 below the best imaginable. He's not a fool. He came from the streets of Compton. He's got to the NFL via Stanford. He's a really intelligent man. So I just didn't like the thuggery that was thrown out about him.
Yeah, I agree with you as well there, Ollie. I don't like something when it's got racial undertones, overtones, whatever the phrase is. Yeah, it's bad chat. Neil, what were your thoughts?
The only real thing that upset me is, that he seemed to really upset Erin. And, that's just, Erin's a lovely lady. And you could just tell by the way she just froze and just, who was talking about you?
That was the best. Who was talking about you?
It was it was like the worst day in any guidance counsellor's life. I didn't expect that. I have no problem with it at all. I mean, if you're going to do your jawing, do it after you've just made that play. As I say, the choke gesture is a bit classic. But there's as you'd expect, there's a fascinating backstory between these two, and they don't get on. And apparently, Crabtree, which he doesn't exactly come across as the most nice human being on the planet. It's probably it all seems to have stemmed from him. And as luck would have it, when you have situations like this where you've dissed someone, it's going to come back in your face at the biggest possible moment. I mean, I'm sure no one was watching that game. I'm sure no one saw oh, that's right. It was one of the most watched sporting events of the year so far. I've got no problem. Mainsy and I always agree on this, and it goes back to one of our friends who is world-class arrogant. If you've got game, it's not arrogance, it's just fact. So if you've backed it up, you be arrogant, you go for it. Arrogance is not an unattractive quality, but I only say that because I'm boss.
For those international listeners, boss is a good thing. Yeah, I agree with you. I haven't got a problem with Richard Sherman at all. I think some of the crap that's been thrown his way is ridiculous, and I think people should just get on with it, really. Especially the thing that is most important for me, they were talking to him like 20 seconds after that play happened. What do you expect the guy's going to say? He's totally pumped. He's, of course, going to run his mouth because that's who he is. Ollie.
What I didn't understand was Erin Andrews came on the Dan Patrick Show, which is the best radio show in the world for my money. And she said that the people at Fox, I'm sure it was Fox who covered the game, they cut her off. It looked like he walked off, but they cut him off because they thought he was going to swear. But isn't that great TV? Like, what are they trying to do there? Like, why did they let him go? Because even if he swore, I'm sure you could pass it off in a statement like, we apologise for it, but it would have been the most watched clip of, like, the century.
They were trying to fit in another replay of Navarro Bowman's injury. Just a 35.
It's
when they say, oh, this injury is absolutely horrific. Let's see it again. No, I'm good. His leg's not supposed to go that way. I get the message.
Good. Well wishes to Navarro Bowman there as well. And Neil's sound system now is so bloody sensitive that I think I'm just going to have to, I'm going to have to draw this to a close, to be quite honest. So Super Bowl, we'll talk about that next week, and in between now and then we'll have words with Neil Dutton about his sound system, and we'll also have words with Ollie about his brain, because clearly he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's forgotten what he was going to say. Ollie, do you have any explanations for your brain farts?
Yeah, it's the Dutton with the sensitivity. People won't know. It's going right through my headphones. It's like having him breathe down my ear like some sort of stalker. This is why I wouldn't be good on live TV with the producer in the ear. Now I've got him giggling like Muttley.
It's very distracting. I know. I've probably got it quieter than you in my headphones, but yeah, it is quite distracting. So I tell you what, for now, let's say, are you drinking, Neil?
I'm drinking now as well.
Such a pro.
Oh my God, I'm not editing any of this out. It's too good. This is podcast gold. So from now, I'll tell you what, it's goodbye from Ollie Connolly.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Neil Dutton.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Keep checking out www.UKEndZone.com and we'll talk to you next week.